You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for the show. And of course, if you guys have been trying to follow the live stream, you are very, very brave. As most people know, we try to go live every Monday and Friday. Well, Monday's usually at 8. Friday's usually at 11, although it may soon switch to 9. We'll see. But, yesterday I was down sick and you had to work, so it was kind of like we had to actually move this thing a couple of times. But, I didn't want to do this one by myself because this is like a year-end review, like kind of like a retrospective of all the Star Wars that came out last year. So, of course, I don't want to do that alone. So, I don't know. Let's get right into this. How did you basically feel about Star Wars overall in 2023?
Overall, 2023, it was hit and miss.
Yeah,
I mean, I think there was
I can tell by
by
your voice. It's like, well,
yeah, it was hit and miss on some things. I think arguably we can say a lot of shows did some things well, and then there were some things that were some glaring problems. And we're not expecting perfection. I mean, most things usually have some flaw if we really are looking for them. Like in any movie or TV show, there's a lot of things that we could probably nitpick or point at, but
which we will. We'll
yeah.
basically take it project by project tonight. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
though.
for the most part, though, I think it was a decent showing for 2023. I would say.
Well,
What about you?
I would say for content, definitely. This is probably, if I'm not mistaken, this is probably the most content we've gotten in a single year. As far as, I mean, now granted, we didn't get any movies or anything like that, but I mean, if you look at the TV shows that we got this year, they were significant. It wasn't just like, usually you get one marquee show, right? Like you'd get The Mandalorian and then maybe you get some other, like The Bad Batch or something. But
Tales of the Jedi or something.
yeah,
like that.
right, something like that. But I mean, this time though, I mean, there was like 3 major shows. Plus, you had Tales of the Jedi and another season of Bad Batch. So I mean, there was quite a significant showing on television, as well as books and comics and all that other stuff, which we usually will reference them when we're talking about canon and a lot of other elements of the shows, but we generally don't focus as much, at least as far as dedicating entire shows to it. We don't really dedicate an entire show, at least not lately, to a particular book, let's say, or a comic series or something. I mean, we could, I don't know, I go back and forth, because number one, it's hard for us, especially with our schedules, to keep up with that stuff. I mean, if we were like full-time YouTubers even, like let's just say we had a bunch of different shows, and this was one of them, it would be easier. And certainly, if we were on par with some of these other Star Wars YouTube shows where that's pretty much all these guys do, then yeah, then sure, we would go through and read every little thing. But, bottom line is we can't do that, although we do try to get through as much as we can. And even if we haven't read something, maybe we just heard about something, we usually try to pass it along to you guys. So that way, if it's something of interest to you, you guys could check it out. So we try to do that, but it is difficult to focus on a particular book or comic or something, or game even. But yeah, you had a lot that was out there. I mean, didn't it might have been last fall. It's so much of this stuff actually blends together. I'm trying to think if Jedi Fallen Order came out this year, but I'm pretty sure it was the fall of last year. Well, actually, this is 2024, so I should say the fall of 22. I'm still thinking in terms of that, but still a lot of content. But like you said, there's a lot of hit and miss, though. There was a lot of Unfortunately, it was like every time that you were able to get excited about something, it didn't take too long before that excitement was deflated once you actually saw the show. The only exception probably would be Andor. David, of course, would disagree. And there's a handful of other people that sometimes chat in too, who Andor didn't necessarily land for them. But for us and for most of the critics, and I would say a good portion of not just Star Wars fans, but just entertainment fans in general, right? They all responded very well to Andor. So, I mean, I think that part of it was good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had a bunch of little, like I said, we had a bunch of little I will call them more insignificant things, like Young Jedi Adventures, for
Yeah, I know.
example.
I
Like, I
was
don't
going to
think
mention that too, but it's like, nobody cares about that. Not our audience, anyway.
exactly.
I won't say nobody cares about it, but
Yeah,
I barely
but I
mention
mean, just
Resistance, you know?
exactly, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, but that's still yet another show. I mean, like, when you talk about overall just content, I mean, that's
Yeah, the sheer
still a piece of
volume.
content that,
Exactly.
yeah, the
Yep.
volume. You had Mandalorian, you still had Andor, you had Ahsoka, you had a lot of different
Don't forget Visions.
visions, yes, visions.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah, exactly. Then of course we had even the Bad Batch. So it's a lot of content that has we that surfaced in 2023, and some of my favorites were, of course, Bad Batch. I always loved that show, um, because I love the perspective. I love the depth and perspective in Andor. Ahsoka was somewhat of a letdown, although they had really good things in it. Overall, I would probably say it didn't live up to expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Visions was better than I anticipated.
I was going to say you were probably less disappointed by Visions than Ahsoka.
Exactly, which
I
is,
mean, when you really stop and think about it, as
it
scary as
hurts me
that
to
may
say
be,
that.
I know, it really does. I mean, it hurts me to say that. I was looking forward to Ahsoka too. I mean, don't get me
you
wrong.
know,
I probably overall like Visions better than you do, but not by much.
hmm
It's
I
something that
think the
I might.
standout for me there was Tales, not Tales, yeah, Tales of the
Yeah,
Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi. That was
That was a sleeper for me, and that really, I really want to see more of that. And I see they just wiped Visions off and just gave me more of Tales of the Jedi. Like, I will be all set. you know,
you know, I
um,
I almost might have to say that might if you're talking about quality, and just like how much I enjoyed it and all that, that might be my favorite project of 2023. I can't think of anything else. Because you could say the same
what,
thing about
Andor?
Mandalorian, right? Well, I mean, yes, okay, that's true. There was Andor, but Andor was different in tone. I mean, I think that yes, Andor probably was my favorite project of 2023, maybe overall. But I mean, if you're talking about strictly from the standpoint of feeling like traditional Star Wars, I mean, I wish it had
Yeah,
been longer. Now, here's the thing:
yeah.
Do you remember the chronological order that these things came? I was gonna try to find that
Ooh.
online somewhere. I guess we don't.
Are
I guess it
you
doesn't
are
really
you
matter.
referring to, you talking about the
No,
shows, or are you talking
yeah,
about where it falls in the
no, no,
timeline?
no, 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 not in. I'd actually have a better shot of knowing where it all falls in canon. Honestly, no, the
Okay, let me
timeline of the
just
shows. Um, Man, I can't remember if it was Tales of the Jedi or Bad Batch season 2 that came out first.
I want to say Bad Batch.
It's usually the
Bad
way it
Batch. I think
works.
I think it started in January.
That might be. That might be. So we can start taking it project by project. Like I said, give some thoughts on it, kind of make it a nice, concise thing. Because again, the idea is we're going to talk about each of the projects that came out in 2023, what we thought about it, what we thought the strengths and weaknesses were, what we would have liked to have seen versus what we saw. We'll talk about each of those things. Obviously, we're going to be chatting with you guys if you guys chat in live. A lot of you I know watch after the fact, and considering our Monday show has been just bouncing all over the place, it's quite frankly a miracle if anybody is really watching it right now. But still, we want to hear from you guys. If you leave a comment in the
Mhm.
comment section, and we can carry it there or on Discord. Well, of course, Ted Adam Green has proven me wrong. He's here, and I'm going to get to his chat in a second. I just want to finish kind of laying out some of the ground rules how we're going to do this. So we'll talk about that, and then once we finish discussing all that stuff, then maybe we'll talk about what we would like to see for this year, for 2024. So with that, let me get this. Ted basically he basically has a couple of chats in here. He says, highlight for me was Ahsoka. That's right. He was the one that really liked Ahsoka. Deep lore with lightsabers and the first real appearance of Force Ghost Anakin that I'm aware of. That's true in live action. Not, well, it might actually be true overall. I don't.
Yeah, I think it's true overall.
Yeah, it's true overall. Flawed but fun. And then he also says, and I also enjoyed finding your podcast this year too. Well, tonight we've made people look a little harder for it, but yes, we actually are very happy, considering you're one of the people that chats in a lot. We're happy that you found us too. And I mean, to that end, look, if you guys are watching this, because we have a bunch of subscribers, I don't know how engaged a lot of these people are, though. Share this with people that you guys know might enjoy this. Because I cannot count and you've run into the same thing, to where, somebody watches our podcast and it's just like, man, where's this been? And then they end up becoming regular viewers. And I think that's really what separates us right now from a lot of the bigger shows, is just visibility. So for those of you guys who are, hardcore viewers of ours, who, have been with us for a long time, or even if you just jumped on board and you're all about it, share it with your friends. Tell your friends, share a link, maybe post it on socials. Help us promote this thing. Make it a grassroots thing. But yeah, I guess we could start with the Bad Batch if you want. Doesn't matter. It's a year in retrospective. We're not, it's all not right. Like, what was it 23? What was the year? It might have been 22, where we said, okay, here's all the upcoming projects that are going to be released in 22, and like maybe 3 of them came out. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay away from, because look, man, this is Lucasfilm we're talking about. They don't even know when stuff is coming out. So, Bad Batch. Overall thoughts, strengths and weaknesses. What are your thoughts?
Batch. I really did like this season. It has a couple of maybe 1 or 2 rough episodes, but overall, I think it was really good. I really did like the advancement of the characters.
Yeah.
I love the cliffhanger that it left us with. I like the story progression too, because now we're at the point now where the Empire are starting to phase out clones, and we're starting to see stormtroopers. So we're actually getting the answer to that question, because we always knew that, all right, in the prequel trilogy, we had the clones, and then it's like when you get to episode 4, you got stormtroopers. So it's like, and we knew that the clone troopers were very competent as far as, shooting and actually hitting targets. And then we get the stormtroopers who can't seem to hit, the broadside of a barn. So it's like, okay, what happened? And we're starting to see that come to fruition in the Bad Batch, and I think that's a really interesting story, especially as this whole thing is hinged upon this group of disbanded clones who are matriculating their way through the galaxy, doing odd jobs and whatnot, but they're starting to see, like, okay, their former life, like, okay, what's happening not only to their former station, but also what's happening to the galaxy overall from their perspective, because they once believed in what the Empire or the Republic stood for, and now they've become the Galactic Empire. Things have changed, and of course Crosshair is still wrestling with the whole idea of, like, hey, I'm all about, serving the Empire. But you were starting to see him have a bit of a change of heart in some actions too. So I'm really curious as to where that's going to go. the characters, man. I love the growth of Omega. I love the growth of Hunter and the ever changing moods of Crosshair. So it's that coupled with a really good story. I can say by far this is one of my favorite um, pieces of content from Star Wars this year.
Yeah, I mean, no pun intended, but I'm gonna echo your statements. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, I had to do it. I've been working on that for a while now, but yeah, look, the way that Omega in particular has grown is really refreshing because they could have gone the cliched route with her character, and they didn't. You know, they made her a part of the team and they made her valuable, but she wasn't, the Kathleen Kennedy female Superman, basically, that was getting them out of every jam constantly and, you know,
Hmm.
or being that typical bratty, punky kid that wants her own way all the time. I mean, that's a story trope that's been done to death, in my opinion. And it was really
Hmm.
refreshing that they had her grow, and they had her grow as part of the team, but they avoided all the cliches that usually go along with that line of storytelling. So I was really happy about that. And then,
Yeah. What am I? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, no.
I was going to say one of the biggest things that really it sucked, but it was good all at the same time, and that's the introduce. We got our first real big heartbreak with them, and that was losing Tech.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like that was a big because like we really didn't see that coming, and it was that sacrifice that he basically had to make, for the good of the team. And it's just like, man, he was so integral, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when you losing Crosshair is like, okay, that sucked, but it was kind of all right because it's like, okay, at best he was just a really good sniper. He was a really good marksman. But I mean, they're all pretty good at shooting and fighting and doing all that. So it's like, all right, you know, but Tech brought something very unique in the sense of like whenever they got into situations, he was the one to figure things out. He was able to hack into anything. They're gonna miss that, going forward.
Oh,
So
yeah.
to see how they're gonna compensate for the loss of him is really going to be um monumental, as well as just there from the emotional standpoint of how do they rebound from losing him like emotionally, but then there's also the actual job itself of doing things like, man, and that was always Sid's favorite. She was always calling him Goggles. So it's and that was just um that was one of those turning points that we really didn't expect to see any of them killed off, basically. So I thought that was it sucked to see, but it was also a great move um for the story.
No, I agree. In fact, and it was sad for me because Tech was actually my favorite one out of all of them. So,
Hmm.
yeah. But like you said, it did provide a lot of drama, and there was a lot. I mean, you basically saw from their perspective the fact that, they used to be, and this is true even in the last season, but I think in this season in particular, they really showed how they're starting to become more isolated because they're not part of the Empire, right? So they didn't go
Hmm.
that route, which was the accepted route for clones. They basically weren't even accepted among their own even before all this, right? Because they were pretty much the bad batch, as it says.
Hmm.
So they had a little bit of discrimination even beforehand. And now, at least before, okay, sure, they were heavily discriminated against and nobody, wanted to deal with them, but at least they were the proper authority in the Republic. But now they're not. And so a lot of avenues that they used to have, a lot of methodology that they used to be able to employ, they can no longer do that legally because of just the fact that the Republic moved over to the Empire. So that's definitely an issue. And of course, David's back with us. Hi, David.
Hey.
He came in here just to hear our thoughts on Andor, I know. Oh, it's good. You haven't missed it yet. But, yeah, overall, I would say The Bad Batch, that's what they did right. I don't really think that there were any real missteps. I mean, there was a couple of episodes I remember, even when we were reviewing, that we were like, this is a little filler, but, you know. Because there was that one that I remember you were complaining about quite heavily. It was that pod racing one.
Oh yeah.
I was arguing that in a lot of ways it did actually advance the story, whereas you're arguing more or less that it was just total filler and unnecessary. So there were things like that, but overall, yeah, I would agree. Same thing. Okay, so what was some of the other things that we were supposed to talk about here with this stuff? Yeah, I mean, like, was there anything that you wanted to see that didn't happen?
No, I can't say that I did. I mean, in retrospect, I think, like I said, I didn't. You know, when you watch these shows, you don't always know what you want sometimes.
Yeah.
But you want something, that keeps your attention, and that was my main thing. And Bad Batch kept my attention. I saw growth. I saw advancement of story. Because originally they were trying to set out to retrieve Hunter again because he had gotten captured. And then, you're thinking like, okay, they're going to regain Hunter again. And everything's going to be right with the world. And then you lose Tech at the end. And it was just like, whoa, that was a whole shift, none of us saw coming. And, so I was like, okay, they're really doing some daring things here. But at the same time, I like it because it kind of pushes the story and pushes the envelope, hopefully in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you want to see from them with the next season?
Like I said, next season I really want to see how the emotional, how they're going to regroup after this emotionally, from losing to actually literally losing one of their brothers, because it's not like he's captured somewhere like Hunter was. I mean, he's gone. So now what? And then I remember how Omega felt when Echo left. But he left just to go like he felt like his place was somewhere else. It was supposed to be like with Rex and all those guys. And so he was like, my place is to, go help them. And he left the team. I remember Omega, how she felt, after that. But this is different. This is like, you can go see Echo again. They'll run into him probably, but to lose Crosshair, I mean, not Crosshair, and Crosshair is gone too. So, what I mean? That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of different versions of loss that this group has sustained. And, you just got to wonder, like, how does that play a factor in their unity and their strategies going forward now. So that's what I'm really interested in. And then ultimately to see the furtherance of this whole clone switching out into the stormtrooper thing. I'm really interested in that story.
Yeah, well, I'm also looking forward to how many seasons are they actually having of this show, because I think that's going to affect pretty much how they frame this, how quickly they get to certain elements of the story. Because I mean, let's just say next season is the last season. Well, then okay, they're going to really tie some things up, and this is really going to lead maybe into A New Hope somehow, or at least into Rebels. I don't know, maybe even Solo. Who knows? But the thing is, they have to figure out how many seasons will this thing actually go, so that way they can properly, let's just say, plan out the rest of the storyline. Because one of the problems that I see, and this happened a lot in the Clone Wars, and the Clone Wars is especially guilty of it, not so much because of how many seasons it went, but how many episodes were in each season. I mean, when you're doing 22 episodes, 24 episodes in a season, I mean, that's a lot. And there was a lot. I mean, it was a brilliant show. It's one of my favorites of all time. I mean, don't get me wrong, but there was a lot of filler in that too.
True.
They could have cut that down to like 12,
15.
15, maybe 14 if you want to keep even numbers or something. 15 if you wanted to do trilogy style. You know, you could easily have done that with the Clone Wars and not lost a single ounce of story of that whole thing. But unfortunately, that wasn't the way that it worked back then. So now that they're doing these shorter episode runs for a season, I think that they could do this a lot better. But we'll have to see. I mean, is it one season? Are they going 5? I mean, we don't know. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think the last thing I wanted to see is are they going to address Omega and Boba Fett?
Yeah, that was another, because when you brought up Omega, I mean, of course, a lot of the things that you said are things that I want to see. I'm sure a lot of people want to see. But the Boba Fett thing, that was another one. It's like, okay, they dropped that on us. Are they going to revisit that? Is that going to be a thing? You know, I mean,
right? Or is that just like, okay, just a quick tie-in to something?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. And honestly, I would respect them for that. I would actually respect them if they're just like, oh, by the way, Boba Fett's sister, and then nothing is ever done about that. Like, it's just a fact, right? It's not a plot point.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that would be cool. All right, what's next in our list?
Well, we can just keep it with animation. We could talk about Visions.
Yeah, we can do Visions and then Tales of the Jedi. Visions, I have a feeling, might be a shorter discussion than the Bad Batch or any of these.
But I'll say this, Eric, when you're right, you're right. But no, I mean, you know, for Visions, it was better. Like I said, it was better than season 1 for me. So that was a plus. I mean, they did have some pretty cool, compelling episodes that I was actually really like. You know what? There's that one that we saw. It's kind of like a Indian brother and sister, and they were on that train like that.
Mm-hmm.
That whole episode was really cool, and I was like, you know what? That really felt like you were in Star Wars.
Totally.
And that was the thing, because sometimes Visions does things that's so avant-garde that it's just like, okay, what is this? Like, is this? I can't even fathom this being in the Star Wars universe. But then the stories this time from the companies that they went with were really, you know, pretty solid, and they felt closer towards to feeling like, you know, something that's Star Wars or a Star Wars iteration. I think if they keep on that trajectory, then, you know, Visions may become, you know, more of a favorite of mine. Or if not, at least it's once again more tolerable.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at least you'll be able to handle watching it and reviewing it. That's
exactly.
But I mean, you're right though. I mean, I think that was a big thing that they did over season 1, because honestly, there were some episodes, especially in season 1, where you're like, okay, if it wasn't for the fact that you saw kind of a Sith Lord looking thing or a lightsaber here and there, you would never even know this was in Star Wars.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, it is just so far removed from Star Wars, which in some cases made it kind of cool, but in other cases, I don't know. And then it was bizarre. Like I said, I was kind of into it, but I don't know if I'd want to see season after season of it, though. That was my biggest concern. Like, I actually thought, as weird and odd as it was from season 1, that kid that had to, you know, play in the band for Jabba or something.
Yeah.
It was really, really strange, but there was a coolness to it, though. But if it's like, I don't know if I want to continue to see, you know, like there's a whole What If series that they have for Marvel, and there's something similar for Star Wars too. It's like a What If. There's like a What If comic series, but then in the books they also have like the Legends of Luke Skywalker and stuff like that, where they do a lot of little What If stories. And that to me is the good platform for that. If you want to do an animated thing of that, that's fine, but it should be a little bit more related. But I have to say, this season of Visions, I was like, all right, now I'm on board with this thing. Like you said, the Indian-based one, and I think that that's another strength too, is the fact that this time they went to other anime studios. You know, it wasn't just Japanese anime. You had all over the world. they actually did some stuff. And I thought that added a lot of diversity and interest to it. And quite frankly, I think it widened it to where a lot of people, I think, would become return viewers simply because it wasn't just basically through one particular lens. But again, I'd have to stress, and this is the problem with Visions, or the strength of it, depending on where you sit with this. If you're not an anime fan, you're only going to get so much into this, and then it's gonna cap off and it's gonna stop. Because I noticed for a lot of people that didn't like it, it's like their problems weren't necessarily with Visions, it was with anime. It's like with the whole format. That's almost like if a person isn't into fantasy or they're not into sci-fi, like they just like dramas and comedies, it's like, well, then you're not going to get a whole lot out of Star Wars then. So if somebody went into that direction and said, well, I just don't like Star Wars, it's like, well, okay, maybe not, but it's really more like you don't like the genre. You don't like the genre, you're not going to like the movie. And it's the same thing with Visions. If you don't like anime, you're not going to like Visions. That's the problem. I see we got a couple of more chats here. Let's see what we got. Oh, David. David says, I'm really hoping they get it together this year. I want to see them be great. Not to be perfect. That actually reiterates what you said earlier. No one hits a home run every time. Just make a good movie worth watching. And that's, absolutely. That's it. It's like, look, just don't put another nail in the coffin of the franchise. How about we start there?
Suck.
Right.
Just don't suck. It's just it's just like you don't have to be, an Academy Award winner, but you kind of don't want to be,
yes,
like
let's
a high school project either.
Right. Let's just start with not like diffusing some of the toxicity. Let's put it that way. David also says Visions was horrible last year. Is he an anime fan or not?
He likes anime. I know he's a fan of like Dragon Ball Z. I don't know how much anime he gets into after that, but I know he's a Dragon Ball Z fan.
Well, and that's cool. Then it's more or less a fair comparison because, like I said, most of the time. But then again, that's another thing. If you're hardcore into Japanese anime, then you might actually like season 1 better than season 2. It just. It's you have to look at some of these Star Wars projects. This is one way where I will not blame Lucasfilm. A lot of times people are like, hey, Star Wars needs to branch out. It can't be so narrowly focused. It's like, okay. But if you don't want it to be so narrowly focused, then you have to understand that there may be some projects that just are not going to be your thing. That doesn't mean they suck. It just means they're not your thing. And maybe you hate it. Like for instance, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with musicals. Like I like some of them, and I like, but the genre though, it's not one of my favorites though, and I have to take it in doses. So if Star Wars came out with a musical, which they almost did with the holiday special, then that would not probably be my thing. And I might be tempted to be more critical about it because it's not my thing, instead of saying, no, maybe it is a brilliant musical. I'm not responding to it. So David says, Vision stories and animation sucked. I should have listened to Daryl.
Man, he's starting out 2024.
Yeah,
started
on the right path.
I think after that Michigan win, he, that kind of got his mind right. But I think, that's the thing with Visions.
But that's what's so funny is now he's like saying it sucks, but you're going, well, it's not really that bad now.
Well, compared to season 1, like I said, I still think that it's like you said, and I think you brilliantly, explained it, is that because anime is not my thing.
Right.
Animation, but anime is not my thing.
After we just praised the Bad Batch, animation's not really my thing.
No, I love animated movies like that, honestly, but some better than actual films because you can do more in a lot of those. But but anime it's never really been my thing. Like I'm not a Dragon Ball Z fan. Like I loosely know about it.
Oh, I'm not a fan
I
of that either. See, that's the other problem too, is that if you actually now you got to get into all the different genres of anime and the
yeah,
different like stylistic things and the different art and stuff like that.
yeah.
I
And
don't like any of
the
the more.
artwork and the fact that their mouths are just so like the style of animation just bothers me because it's almost like I feel like those old Japanese um samurai movies where like they'll talk and then the words will pop up but it doesn't match their mouth and it's just weird to me. So I'm not an anime fan. Um but I know of course they have like tons of people who are like into this. So it's like, cool, you have something that you can latch on to that's Star Wars centric or related. So have at it. Like you said, I mean, that's just your bag. For me, I'll lean more towards like traditional animation where the Clone Wars, Rebels, that's my thing.
So, other than cancellation, what would you like to see for season 3?
I would like
Putting
to
it out
see
there.
things. No, I would like to see things a little bit more closer to, like I said, those episodes that I aforementioned. The I wish I knew the name of it because I hate keep saying like the Indian one because it sounds kind of
Yeah, I know it does sound.
but but I don't really have any other ways to say it.
Hey, man, you know what? It might have been like around 5 or something,
Yeah, it
6,
was like in the
somewhere in
middle. It's
there.
like 5 or 6.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was definitely in the middle.
but it's okay
But yeah,
because it was done by an Indian animation studio. So you could say that because
yeah.
you're really talking about the animation studio.
I know, but in this day and age, you just never
I
know. But
know, I know. Well, hey, it did get us viewers. Maybe we should like dial it up a little. Be controversial if nothing else, right? But no, I know what you mean.
right,
It's like it does just sound bad when you have to keep referring to it like that.
yeah.
But like that one, there was a couple other ones I remember that because really the only one that I remember, I think there might have been 2. The first episode was the one that you didn't really like that much. Like you thought the
They
animation
always
was
come out the
cool,
gate. Yeah,
but you were just like, oh man, we're starting off on the wrong. Like, man, you
here we
may
go
have to do
again.
this one on your own if this keeps up. But fortunately, like the second episode was like a complete 180 and it kind of hooked you a little bit. And I think there was
Yeah.
one other episode that you were sort of lukewarm on. It might have been the ballet one. It might have been that. But then again, that was kind of cool too because they had all that kind of espionage and she was all pretending like, I'm a ballet dancer,
Mhm.
but I'm really going to start killing everybody in here. I mean, that was kind of cool. But I thought there was
Yeah,
one other one in there though that you're kind of like, it was all right. I didn't like you didn't hate it. That was the thing.
yeah. And see, that's the thing. It's like when you have like the ones that really I really like I said the aforementioned Indian one. Like okay, that stood out to me because that was really good. Everything else was just like it was okay. Like I could deal with it. So they're not memorable for me. You know what I mean?
You know what's
It's kind of like
ironic?
that. Hmm?
I had Indian food tonight for dinner. It's like I
That's
sensed
hilarious.
something. I know.
Um, but yeah, it's almost like when you buy an album and it's like, all right, you have a couple of tracks that's really like jamming, and then there's the rest of this album. It's just kind of like, it's all right. Like I listened to it, but it really didn't grab me, and that's kind of how I felt about Visions season 2.
Well, but I think it's actually making strides though because you didn't hate it. Like you didn't
Right.
have I mean, you just had such almost
Yeah.
nearly violent feelings about it last year.
The season 1. Yeah, I
Whereas
really
this year
wanted
it
to
was kind of
know.
like, okay, I don't hate it. I like one or two of them a lot. I'm okay with the rest of them. So, yeah, I guess what you're looking for is maybe a little bit more of that, a little bit more. Let's make
They
it feel a
correct.
little bit more like Star Wars,
I
and then
think
you're
the
fine.
biggest thing that what Visions did is as opposed season 2 as opposed to season 1 was the fact that they had more exposition, so I knew what was going on.
Yes. Oh man.
That was the biggest change in season 2, and I think that's, because the first season was just like, okay, it's left up to your own interpretation.
Well, you
And it's
didn't
like,
even know
okay,
what
not
you were
only do I have to figure
watching.
out what you're watching, exactly. Like, I don't even know what I'm watching.
It's
And
like,
then the
what
animation's
is
all over the
this?
place. So it's like,
Well, here's
like,
the
are
thing
you
about
serious?
season 1, right? So season 1, I mean, this
Mhm.
is all good points. Number 1, it it didn't even feel like Star Wars. I mean, if you just didn't see like an R2 unit pop up every once in a while, or a lightsaber or some Sith
Yeah.
looking thing, you wouldn't even really know it was Star Wars. The second thing was, in addition to that, you had like zero context. I mean, you were just dropped
Mhm.
in this world. You had no idea what was going on. You had no idea the parameters that even govern this world. I mean, you were just left to. It was just basically like watching a lot of abstract art,
Yeah, very avant-garde. Yeah,
which I
it's
could
like a
deal with, but you got to be in the mood for
it's like
that. That's the problem.
yeah, it's like looking at a a season of a workshop test, and you're just kind of like, okay, what do you see?
I don't
It's
even know
like,
what this is. There was a couple
yeah, it's like an
episodes I
ink
remember
blot,
that
like the
stood
ink
out.
blot test.
Yes. Yeah. David said, anime, cartoons, whatever, it defeats the purpose if it doesn't look cool good. Whether it's Batman the Animated Series or Looney Tunes or Dragon Ball Z, the characters, art, and stories need to be great. I don't know. I disagree completely on the sense that the animation was anything less than stunning on Visions, particularly in season 2. I mean, I will give them full on credit for the actual animation. Even the first episode, which the animation was probably the animation and that Sith Lord at the end was probably the best part of it. Because the problem with the first episode of season 2 was it was a little bit of a carryover, like what you said. I felt like there was a little bit more context than what you got in season 1, but not much.
Hmm.
And you didn't really understand. I think that was what your complaint was. You're like, because I said, well, all the symbolism, it's all plain, it's all really simple. And you were like, well, yeah, that's true, but you didn't get all that till the end. It was like once you saw the ending, the rest of it made sense. But when you were watching it, none of it made sense. So that was true.
Yeah.
But as the season went on, actually starting with episode 2, honestly, then it started to make more sense. And sure, some animation studios are going to be a little bit more stylistically pleasing to your particular palette than others, but I wouldn't say that any of the animation sucks. See, again, you got to separate the objective from the subjective. I could totally hate something, but admit that it's brilliant if I'm looking at it objectively. This doesn't land for me.
Hmm.
But I'm hoping that, yeah, Vision Season 3, which I don't know if it's been official. I think it
Hmm.
has, though. I think it is coming out.
It's official.
Is it coming out this year?
Yep, I believe so.
Oh, all right. David said, the animation was stunning. I must be on drugs. I don't know your personal life, dude. Apparently, I need to pay more attention in class. Oh, wise one. Although, if you do have some drugs, I wouldn't mind. Actually, you would probably be better off taking drugs while watching Visions. It would
Right.
probably enhance the experience. But it is good that we have another. I mean, look. So now Visions and Andor are the series that we can all fight over. That's good. So what are we
what's
on next?
What
Tales of the Jedi?
Tales of the Jedi. Now this
Oh, that would actually make a
this
good porn
series,
movie title. Maybe not the male Jedis though. I'm just saying it's late.
for a second I thought about it. I was like, how does it okay.
I'm just
All right, I
saying
see what
that's
you
the
did there.
type of thing that those kind of companies would do. I'm not condoning it in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form. But
Well, it's anything like that rape picture I sent you.
oh yeah, there is that.
But,
There is that.
no, Tales of the Jedi was a phenomenal and see, and that's more my bag, like that really landed with me. I really enjoyed the backstories that they told of some of our beloved characters, and really gave more context, more exposition on where they come from and how they got to the point where before we knew them. Excuse me. Um, so like primarily it focused on Ahsoka and Count Dooku, or as David likes to call him, Dracula.
Ah, yes. Yes.
So uh yeah, I really enjoyed it because one, we got a chance to see how, and we still didn't see completely how Dooku got to the dark side, but we did get more information on that. We also got to see the relationship between he and Mace. Um,
And he and
that
Palpatine, too.
whole, yeah, the episode with baby Ahsoka essentially, and that crazy like wolf thing that was in the forest was really spellbinding. Because you really just didn't know, like, okay, how, I mean, we knew that Ahsoka obviously was going to live, but we just didn't
Sure.
know what was going to happen,
Yeah, you
like as
didn't know
far
what
as
was
what
going to
was going to.
transpire or who around her was going to die.
Yeah, so
Although that's probably my least favorite episode out of all of them, honestly. Mostly
yeah, I mean the
because,
Duke.
yeah, the
Go ahead.
Dooku stuff. That was, I
Yeah, the Dooku
honestly, my
stuff.
biggest complaint about that show is I wish it had more episodes.
Absolutely, it was one of those things where you want those were it was what, 6?
Yeah, wasn't that many. I think it
And
was.
yeah, it was like 6 episodes.
Yeah, because a couple of them, you had, like, the most compelling episode to me was the whole Yaddle Dooku one.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the one,
Mm,
man. That was the one that just was like, wow. Because that gave you a little bit more insight into Yaddle, too.
yeah. And then the other one when Anakin was putting Ahsoka through that training,
Yes.
that was
That
really
was
good.
cool. And I mean, we sort of got shades of that in the Ahsoka series in that one episode.
Hmm.
So it was nice to
Yeah,
see that.
and then when basically Ahsoka, when she left the Jedi Order and she tried to live like a normal life,
Hmm.
and she was trying not to use her powers. It's almost kind of like the after the purge, and she, saw that family or that lady, she was about to get crushed by something, and she used the Force to kind of save her. But that one guy basically dimed her out to the Sith, like, hey, there's a Jedi over here. You got, and Ahsoka had to break him out again. It's like, all right, you know,
Well, another
I'm
thing
still about
too,
that life.
that was very reminiscent. It was almost like a continuation in a way of what we saw in Clone Wars season 7. Because if you remember, most of
Hmm.
the beginning of that was Ahsoka trying to blend in, working with those two mechanic chicks, and
Yeah,
there was that one time where she ended up having to use the Force because it's like, all right, I have to, or we're gonna die, or you're gonna
yeah,
die. So there was a lot of similarities, I thought, between that and this particular episode. So I mean, it was really cool. I mean, again, I think that both of us probably would say that our only real complaint was it was just too short of a season.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was only 6 episodes.
So where would you want to see it go next? Because they are doing season 2 might be coming out this year too, isn't it?
I believe so.
I think it is. I think I
Yeah, I
remember
believe so.
reading. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think that the next season of Bad Batch is going to be out. I think Tales of the Jedi is coming out in Visions. I think. I could be wrong. Because I know we also have Skeleton Crew and The Acolyte. Those are essentially confirmed to come out this year. So, like, Mandalorian season 4 is still up in the air. You read something new about that every day, it seems. But yeah.
Uh, well, it's revealed this entire Force slip, and December 3 is expected. Jedi season 2 has production
All right, so
uh
it's in production.
completed.
Oh, is it? Oh, you broke it. You've
Yeah.
been kind of like breaking up a little bit here and there sometimes. So all I heard was like production. So it was the production, it completed production. All right, well there you go.
Production.
All right, well David has a funny comment. He says, "I can only imagine showing up to church and having people ask me, 'Minister, are you high?'" Say you're high on life.
Well, I will say, if you want to be biblically accurate, there was a little burning bush, but never.
A little different context, but we can go with that.
Yeah.
But what else is did they actually say this year then, or Tales of the Jedi?
It does say that it's set to release. It just has to give a specific
Date
or time.
Yeah.
Date, yeah.
All right, so after Tales of the Jedi, I think that wraps it up for the animated shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So which of the live actions do you want to go for? I mean, we got Mandalorian, we got Andor, we got Ahsoka. We're reviewing them all.
Mandalorian season 3.
$200. It's almost sounding like a game show to me.
All right.
All right, so Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah, I thought it was a decent episode. It wasn't as good as 1 and 2.
No.
But it was
not even close.
Yeah, but it was okay.
If I were going to describe it in one word, I would say disjointed.
I would agree.
Because basically what you have is you have the storyline that should have been more the whole like, okay, we're going to go back and take back Mandalore and all this other stuff. And you basically had them moving towards that, but then there would be all these like weird detours. And then they were just doing these like weird experimental things. Like we always go back to the Lizzo Jack Black episode because that episode felt more like a Star Trek episode mixed with maybe like Law and Order, which that part I actually wasn't too unhappy with. Like we always talk about the whole genre thing, right? So it's sort of like, okay, a procedural in Star Wars, because that's sort of what they did with Loki, in a way. But the thing is, while that's a cool idea, don't put it in the middle of this particular show at this particular time of the storytelling.
Yeah, man, especially after you come off the heels of season 2. There was some cute things like, when Grogu was on the sand and on the beach and he had to try to compete with the rest of the Mandalorians. I thought that was kind of fun and kind of hilarious at the same time but he was just like, he's so used to the Jedi thing and now he has to switch gears and kind of do this whole Mandalorian thing because that's the choice that he made. It's like, all right, now how do I, navigate, being basically a Mandalorian and, at first he's kind of getting this butt kicked because, and then, they're just like, oh yeah, no, do you, man, be Grogu, so then he starts doing all his little flips and, it was just like, okay, that was really cool. And there were some other things, the relationship between, Din and, what's her name? Katie Sackhoff.
Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan, thank you. Yeah, so this developing relationship between those two characters, that's the space battle that the kind of, I won't say it was a space battle, but it was more atmospheric battle that they had when he jumped into the Naboo fighter and they were like flying around the little city or whatever, and they were have almost like having this whole little dogfight type thing where they kind of had to team up. I thought that was really cool. Like I said, it had good moments in it, but then like you said, Eric, it was quite disjointed in a lot of different areas where it was hard to really see where the season was really going.
Yeah,
And I
that
think
was
that's
it.
what took a lot of people out of it.
it just lacked cohesion, and there was still some filler. They handled some things a little bit poorly, but then there were other things that were cool. And again, if you guys want to see like more in-depth versions of, because again, we're just sort of doing an overview, sort of like a year in review retrospective kind of thing. These aren't really meant to be like deep reviews or insights or any of that stuff. If you want to see that on our channel for all the shows that we're talking about, we actually have reviews for every episode. That includes Tales of the Jedi. That includes Mandalorian Season 3. Well, actually, all the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Visions, much to Daryl's chagrin. Bad Batch, although we didn't finish this season, but most of it's up there. So, I mean, you guys can go back and actually check out, like, all of our really, I don't want to say, like, deep thoughts, but kind of our, like, in-depth reviews, I guess.
Yeah.
But, I mean, overall, yeah. I just felt like Season 3 was kind of a letdown. It didn't really have the strength of Seasons 1 and 2. It didn't have the gravitas of those. It didn't have the cohesion of those. It was just somewhat all over the place. And it didn't really tell a super cohesive story, which is too bad because it had the potential. Of course, we could say that about any of the Disney projects, right?
Right. I mean, towards the end of Season 3, the episodes did really get intense. Like when you got all the Mandalorians and they were all in that cave and they were trying to like basically kind of reclaim Mandalore, and Gideon had this whole trap set up for him. And, so that whole thing brought a lot of, especially like that whole battle when they're all flying in midair and they're shooting each other, at the rocket propelled stormtroopers that Gideon had. And so that was really like cool. And that was something new. And see, that's something new and fresh that we hadn't seen in Star Wars before. And that's cool. That kind of reminds me of the comic book series that you've been reading.
Yeah, the other thing too, I thought that the way they handled the whole Grief Karga thing, that storyline, and how he kept floating in and out, I thought that was really good. And see, if you're going to do a side story, that's where you go, because it is a subplot, but it does still tie into the plot proper, if you want to call it that.
Right.
There was
finding his own place.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I will say, I did miss the presence of Cara Dune.
Yeah.
I really wish that, they could have rectified that whole situation before Season 3. I would love to see them bring her back eventually. I don't know. I go back and forth on whether I want it recast or not, because I do think that the character's important. But then again, I remember we did a show where they could just plug Hera in there instead, and that might work. What else did they have? Oh, didn't they have a whole thing at the end? It's been a minute since I saw it, where basically Din was kind of on decent terms with the New Republic and was going to do jobs for them and stuff.
Yeah, he was he was becoming the marshal basically for
that's
Grief
what it
Karga's
was.
new but then I remember he did have this whole kind of standing agreement with the New Republic, because that's when we've got the first glimpse of Zeb.
Yes. In that bar scene.
In the bar scene, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think, and like I said, Season 3 has some cool moments to it, but like you said, because of this, lack of continuity in the story, it just, that really sapped a lot of the energy.
It did.
From this particular series.
It did. It really, what it did was it killed the momentum. And so hopefully, look, there's a chance that they can get it back easily in Season 4. It wasn't like Season 3 was a total disaster, but it did have some problems that they definitely need to fix. All right. Ahsoka, Andor, Ahsoka,
Mighty Andor.
We gotta talk about Andor while David's still watching.
Yes, Andor was. I like I said, I really enjoyed the in-depth backdrop of Andor. I know, yes, it is a slow burn. It definitely is, and I know that took a toll on a lot of people, myself included, as well as David and many others. But I think once you get a little bit past that, and you really get involved into these characters, I think the character development was very profound. It left something to your imagination. It really, at times, it pulled on your heartstrings. At times, it really, um, sometimes, gave you that sense of tension. Um, Especially like with Mon Mothma and her family, man, just the tension between her and her husband and even her daughter at times.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had um Luthen, who would show up, and they would have this that whole coded talk between the two of them when they were picking up antiques, and how they basically were giving coded messages because they know they were being spied on. And so that whole thing just brought a whole lot of gravitas and a whole different element, um to a show in Star Wars, something we've never seen before in Star Wars.
Nope.
And then once again, that's how you do it. I think those were good moments where you show like this is something fresh, this is something new. Um you had Deidre and Cyril, those two characters, man. I mean, just almost like polar opposites of each other, but yet, how they say opposites attract, and it's that was really, I liked how that was teased, almost like that romance, but not really fulfilled. And just the development of each of those characters. Deidre's gaining more power. Cyril is trying to he's finding himself a little bit more. And he's trying to like, okay, I was once this guy, then I got demoted, and I'm trying to work my way back up to
Yep.
being respected again. And once again, that's something we've never seen in the Empire before. Or not even, he's not Imperial, but we've never seen that on more of an Imperial level type thing.
Well, I mean, he is.
A little
He
bit with
basically
Krennic,
he kind of
but
is an Imperial though, because he was dispatched to that what they call it, like something core. It was where it was on that planet. It was basically like
they
the
were like the
government,
local police.
yeah, like the local
Yeah.
police or whatever. And then he was sort of demoted and put in, that one area, for the Imperials and stuff. But then then he started to work his way up. And I mean, that was when you were talking about the slow burn aspect of it. I think it was what made that feel even worse is the fact that it wasn't just a slow build as it ramps up. It would start out like it was really going to start to explode, and then it would sort of be brought back down. And
It's
then
like
it would,
listening to classical music. That's
yeah,
Andor reminds me of classical music. Like if I had to put that in a musical term, that's how I would depict it, because it it had its swells and decrescendos, and it would just it had different things that would come in and out. You never were just riding a high for too long before you kind of come back down. And then there were some moments where it would kind of build, and then
yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah. No, I mean,
You got
one of the the stream had a little bit of a hiccup there for a second. But everything seems to be back to normal, which is good. It's always nice when the stream continues to work. But yeah, so hopefully I didn't miss too much of that. Pretty much what you were talking about with the whole classical music example is great, because one of the things that makes classical music incredible is the same thing in the movie version, what makes Andor so incredible, and that is there's dynamics. There are definite dynamics in this show. And sometimes those dynamics can be frustrating because, especially you see a buildup. Like a perfect example of that is you take Cyril. All right. He starts out where he's somewhat, I mean, a little bit, but he's kind of almost a butt kicker. In the sense of, he's drunk with power. He's trying to, do his thing or whatever. And then he gets demoted, and then he's disgraced, and and everything else. And then it takes a while for him to start to build his momentum back up again. And it's
Well,
funny
yeah,
is,
one of the best. Go ahead.
well, as often as this guy, I always wanted to call him Cereal because every time, that's all he seems to
Yeah,
eat. Like every scene, he's just chowing
yeah,
down on some cereal with his mom or whatever, but that's another thing. Cyril's mom versus Andor's adopted mom or whatever. You see a
yeah,
lot of that parent-child relationship in there too, which I mean, the only time you really see that in Star Wars is like these crazy things, like Vader's trying to convert his son to the dark side, and of course, the Han
hmm
Solo Kylo Ren thing, and I mean, usually it's kind of these just boisterous versions, right? This is a little bit more subtle and a little bit more grounded. Grounded would be a great way to describe this show.
yeah. I think one of the things that was really that stands out, and you made a good point, is about the parental aspects because you got to see juxtaposition. You had Cyril's mom, who was basically kind of like, "Look, man, you're not, you kind of suck, just." And then on the flip side, you had Andor's mom, who's trying to inspire him to be more.
Right. Oh, and
So
that
I
speech that
liked.
she gave at the end of that one episode, man.
Oh yeah, that was just like one of those. Today we celebrate our Independence Day. It's like
Yeah,
one
it's
of those
totally one of
moments.
those.
But then you also had the byplay in the Empire, where you actually get to see the cunningness and the savagery between the Imperials when they're all jockeying for position.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the very beginning with Deidre, and then you saw a lot of the tyranny, the torture of that poor girl. What's her name?
Oh, yeah, oh, man, it's on the tip of my tongue, too.
Yeah, but when we saw the torturing of her, that was just really strong. You, like I said, Andy Serkis, the prison break, just the setup for that
Mm-hmm.
was very good. Um, and like I said, there was just a lot of great, even with Cyril. That's what I was thinking about earlier. Because when you first see him, he comes off with all this, bravado, and he's the take charge kind of guy. And then he's like, okay, no, gather your men. He's like, fine, I'll have to do it myself. Gather your men. Then he has to get on this thing and make this speech,
And
and
he
he has
can't do
no
it.
words for the people.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was so hilarious.
I know. That was
And
great.
but then also the part of like, all right, now he let his ego get up the best of him. He goes out there and loses all of his men, and now he has to answer for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, to me, that was just great story writing, because you don't see that a lot. You don't see the person's ego having to get checked like that, and then them having to deal with the loss in Star Wars. In a Star Wars film, you really don't see that a whole lot. So I thought there's a lot of different avenues. They didn't use CG too much. They used real world situations, or real world places. So that brought a lot to the show. Luthen, you didn't always know which side of the coin he was on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was just a lot of different things that are
Well, and
really
don't
good
forget,
with
too,
Andor.
one of the other things I thought that Andor did brilliantly was the fact that you started to really see the Republic starting to become a shell of what it once was,
Hmm.
right? Because everybody's sort of going through the motions, but you go into the Senate room and there's hardly anybody there anymore because what's the point? But
Yeah.
it's still the Emperor's way of giving the illusion that there's some form of democracy still happening. And those scenes really made it hit home, I think, more than any exposition that's done by a character or something. Is like, you're actually seeing the effects of this. You're seeing how the senators are being watched increasingly more and more closely. And it used to be that they were just sort of watched, but now they're starting to get in danger of being arrested or killed, or so there was that whole element of it. So there was just a lot of richness to the series. Now David has a question. He says, random question. Do you all agree with definition in the context of film? Dialogue is a debate of a choice, or dialogue is a debate leading up to the characters making a choice? I mean, I'm leaving this up here because I'm
Yeah,
contemplating this.
ponder.
Yes.
Yeah. Dialogue is a debate of a choice, or dialogue is a debate leading up to the characters making. It's both, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I would say that.
It just depends on the dialogue because you have,
Well, it's like you said too, the context of it, right?
yeah,
Because
because
what story you're trying to. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for that
yeah,
that I'm aware of, anyway. It's like you said, it really depends on the story you're trying to tell, what you're trying to make the characters do, because you could actually have good dialogue, but if you make the wrong choices about that dialogue, like where it fits into a particular scene, or maybe, you could have like brilliant dialogue, but that particular character wouldn't say that, right? It's out of place for them.
mm-hmm.
Like Han Solo's
Well,
not going to give some Independence Day type speech. They could write the
well, I
most
mean,
brilliant version, but
well, case in point, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, case in point, the original line in Empire Strikes Back when Leia says,
mm,
"I love you," it was written back that Han Solo was supposed to say, "I love you too."
mm-hmm,
But Harrison Ford, knowing the character so well and really embodying that character, he said, like, no, Han wouldn't say that.
right.
He would say, "I know,"
Yep.
because at that point, Han still has that smug kind of like, even almost in the face of danger, like, I'm still me.
Yeah.
He's not gonna just shirk from that. And that's one of the most iconic lines in film history, really, but especially from that movie. So yeah, with the whole thing with Andor, I think that, uh it was a really good show. I think it's just it the pacing sometimes was too slow in some areas. But other than that, I probably would say it's actually one of the better written, acted, and um, visually compelling um,
Yeah, and that's what basically I was
series.
saying too before the whole stream thing started hitting, was the fact that there's just so much richness to this on all
Hmm.
kinds of different fronts. And the fact that they did it the way they did that, because if you really stop and think about all the different plot points, all the different characters, everything that they had to balance, plus carrying the canon forward, yeah, that's a lot, man. That's a lot. That's a big
Hmm.
responsibility. So it was good that they were able to do that. So, I mean, for season 2 of Andor, which isn't coming out until, well, now we can say it officially, next year,
Hmm.
right? 2025. What are you looking for that one?
Um, of course, we're going to see the introduction of K2SO.
Yep.
Interested in that story. Interested in how this time jump thing is going to, go and how that's going to impact the story. And of course, just the advancement of all the characters. Just seeing where it goes, what happens with Deidre and Cyril. Um, of course, we know Andor makes it out because
Rogue
he
One.
ends up in
Yeah.
Rogue One. So, but just to see how that kind of comes to fruition. Um, and yeah, those are really my big points for season 2.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Basically, my big thing for season 2 is just I want to see the connective tissue to Rogue One. I want to see more of what we got in the beginning. I want to see more connective tissue to Rogue One, and I want to see a little bit more of, like you said before, the Cyril, the Deidre thing, and maybe a little bit
Mon
more stuff
Mothma,
on Mon Mothma. But I mean, like stuff on the Imperial side, because Mon Mothma connects to Rogue One as well. So
yeah.
it's like I kind of count everybody in the rebellion. I sort of count as part of that connective tissue thing, because their story continues in Rogue One, but we don't really see much. I mean, we do see some of the Imperial stuff, but it's all the high level stuff. Now we're back to Vader and Tarkin and Krennic and all those guys.
Hmm.
Whereas here, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to see. So that leaves basically Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, again,
Well,
for all these, we have in-depth reviews of them. So if you guys are really interested in all of our thoughts on an episode by episode basis, definitely watch that. And with Ahsoka, it's kind of like where we left it off, right? I mean, it was just, it had problems.
yeah, I think with Ahsoka, I know David wants to see everybody come to work, want to come to work. That was the big thing for him, is just the
Mm-hmm.
acting. The acting has to come up. Um,
Filoni has to get more
the
experience directing
Filoni
live
has to get more
action.
experience. Correct. I'm ready to see Thrawn be Thrawn. Just really give us that we see hints and glimmers of it, but I really want to see him come out and really be the Thrawn that we know. In depth on Ezra, like what's he been doing? Like, there's so many questions about him. As far as his growth and his development, obviously seems like he's gotten more powerful. So it's kind of like, all right, what have you been doing? And so I think there's, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's supposed to be something with Kanan popping
Well, they
up in
mentioned,
season 2.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, unless he's a Force ghost,
Yeah, I think it's like
like
it's a Force
Anakin,
Ghost or
right? I
right.
mean, I guess that's
Yeah,
possible. But that's another
yeah.
show that was really somewhat disjointed. I mean, for the first like 2 or 3 episodes, I'm like, is this Ahsoka or Sabine? Like, which show am I watching?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
the best thing about that was the late Ray Stevenson's portrayal of Balin. I
Yeah.
mean, there were a lot of, again, there was some cool stuff in there, but then there were a lot of things, like, I remember one of the things that we pointed out that was really bad is when, you had that whole almost mutiny, the guy's like, for the Empire, and then of course, when they're
Yeah.
going before the council or the,
Well, tribunal basically
yeah,
is like, oh
basically this
yeah.
like war tribunal, it's like, well, we don't really know. We don't think that it's all that serious. We don't, it's like, you guys, you have like people infiltrating like shipyards and stuff like that. What are you talking about? You don't think it's serious? I mean,
You
again,
lost a whole prisoner,
yeah, right,
mind you.
right. And that was the other thing too, like that first scene when Balin and
Balin and
what was her name?
she
Can't remember. It was something like that.
Shati or something like, it's not
Yes,
Shakti,
no, but
it's something
it's
close to, it's like
something like that. Yeah, Shinty or something. I don't know. Whatever her
Panda.
name is, the blonde chick.
Yeah.
I mean, their whole
The one who looks like she should be
introduction,
off Euphoria.
right? Her introduction was cool, but the whole problem that I had with them was the fact that it's like, oh, they're Jedi. Well, let's bring them on board. It's like, okay, you don't even know who these people are. You don't, oh, well, let's just only send like 6 people or something like to, meet these guys. I mean, that whole scene was just, there were so many things about it that were just so, I guess, nonsensical.
It was just stupid. Yeah, it's just like, okay,
Just
this
bad
from
writing.
a story
That's what it
perspective,
was.
bad writing. Yeah, it was just bad
Just
writing.
terrible writing.
Shin Hati.
Shin Hati, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That was it. And I actually liked her character too.
Yeah, it seemed like she would be a perfect match for Kylo. Like her
Absolutely.
and Kylo would like date each
She
other.
is the Harley Quinn to Kylo Ren's Joker, man.
Absolutely.
And David would like that because there's a Batman reference in there.
Yes. As long
But
as
she is,
she
is, well, not the Robert Pattinson one. Don't worry about it.
right.
But yeah, I mean,
doesn't show up.
That's the thing that I had. Those are the kinds of things that I had a lot of issues with. A lot of it was the fault of the direction. There's a lot of bad writing. When Ezra and Sabine had their reunion, it was almost like they were reading off of cue cards.
Yeah, it didn't. I felt no emotion in that.
No emotion. But then again, the Night Sister thing I thought was handled pretty cool. There was a lot of stuff that I thought, it was, there was enough in there where again, and I want to reiterate this. I think I said this on last week's show too when we were referencing Ahsoka. Is the fact that we enjoyed it. Oh, we were talking about Rebel Moon because we're like, oh, it's kind of like how Ahsoka was. Like we enjoyed it, but there was a lot of problems with it. But unlike some projects or whatever where they do this, in spite of the problems, it was an enjoyable series and it was a fun ride. It just did not live up to expectations. That's the problem.
Yeah, I just really want to see more. Now, unfortunately, that Ray Stevenson has passed. Hu Yang was also another standout character.
Oh,
That I
MVP,
really
man.
enjoyed.
In that whole
Yeah, man.
series.
So, I really am looking forward to seeing more um from him. And then, like I said, just wanting to know more about Ezra and Thrawn. Like, what do they go through while they were all that time? Like, what happened?
And
So,
how much of that is going to be handled in Ahsoka and how much is going to pick back up in The Mandalorian?
hmm
Because that's another thing, It's like, okay, they're either going to deal with this more in Ahsoka season 2, or when Mandalorian season 4 comes out, maybe that's when we see Thrawn being Thrawn. David said Ahsoka made Andor look like a masterpiece. The casting was awful, except Rey. Ahsoka should be recasted. Make the cast learn how to fight. They look like the Golden Girls when they fight. That was another good point too. Was that the choreography really wasn't that great? It was
yeah, bring Nick Gillard back.
Yeah, because the problem was is that it looked choreographed. That was the biggest problem I had. It looked like two actors executing moves that they had rehearsed.
And 1 and 2 and 3 and
Yeah.
4.
And now
Like
you
they're doing the
spin this
counts in their
way,
head.
and I'll do this, and I mean that's what every one of the lightsaber battles look like. And except maybe a couple of the Ahsoka Rey ones, well, Ahsoka Balin ones. Now you got me doing it. Those were probably the better ones, I guess. But yeah, there are a lot of problems. And like I said, if you guys really want a nice in-depth catalog of all the problems we saw with it, go back and watch our Ahsoka review. But again, it's kind of like we said, wrapping up this whole year in review, 2023, I would say, gave us a lot of good content, but unfortunately, the caveat is a lot of it had issues.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I was just going to add really quick that the books and stuff like that were great. Like the books that came out in 2023, the comics that came out in 2023, they were all solid.
Yeah, I think with the visual mediums, I think those just need some polishing, just more attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it feels like it was rushed. Hopefully now, because of the strike, hopefully what that does is it gives them more time to actually like look over what went right, what went wrong, and then try to accentuate the right and try to correct the wrong.
Yeah.
And hopefully, because they have another year basically to release some of this stuff, that we'll get a better product next time. And technology is going to continue to advance, so hopefully we'll see bigger and better in those series.
Well, the other thing, speaking of which, it's another thing that just popped into my head. I hope that the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew are not, by proxy, extensions of all the issues that we've seen. Because if those two shows were handled the same way that these other ones were, they could be suffering from the same problems, even though they're coming out this year. They were completed before. So, we might be revisiting another, like, oh, here we go. But yes, I agree. I hope that maybe they regroup, they learn from some of the things that they did right, the things they did wrong, and maybe moving forward, it gives them a chance to try to right the ship. But how many times have we said this?
True. It's true. I
mean,
think it's just, a lot of it's going to be incumbent upon the direction of, the directors and, who they really get to play these characters. And the stories that are told and written. I mean, hopefully, I'm really looking forward to Acolyte. I really want to see that story. I just hope it lives up to expectations. I'm not at this point in life. I'm not, I'm not putting all bets in on it. I'm just kind of just all right,
Well, and that might be
playing
why,
conservatively.
honestly, that might enhance the enjoyment of it. Because the expectations are so low at this point that, now you'd be like, oh, this is amazing. But
Exactly.
I also hope, to piggyback on that it does really, really well and that it's very good because it's telling stories in a brand new era. This is, now we're crossing into the High Republic era. So this is like the introductory project for that era that's going to define, for better or for worse, any other storytelling that happens in that era. So hopefully it ends up being good. All right, that was pretty much our year in review for 2023. Of course, we're now in 2024. I'm sure probably at some point this month, we might do a show on what we can expect in 2024 and what we would like to see from the projects that are coming out this year, and maybe some of the rumors that are swirling around, because, with this new Rey movie, we still don't know what's going on with that. Some people are saying that it's shooting like in a week or something. Then other ones are like, no, it's going to be released in like 2026. I mean, who knows? Who knows with these people? But know that we're going to be here every week, taking it as it comes, basically. So let us know what you guys thought about 2023 when it came to Star Wars. What was your favorite project and why? Leave that in the comments section. I might actually put another poll up for that. Leave it in our Discord. You still have a few seconds to chat. Let me do this really quick. I want to see, because I'm always putting up polls now, and I want to check out really quick before we take off here where we're at with some of the polls that we put up. So, obviously, people are still favoring the 9 p.m. start time for Friday, but honestly, 67% don't even really care because they just watch it on demand anyway. Rebel Moon, because we reviewed it a little bit, we actually talked about, should it have been a Star Wars movie? Would it have been a better Star Wars movie? We talked about that this past Friday. We put up a poll. We said, would Rebel Moon have worked better as a Star Wars movie like it was originally intended? 63% of you said no, it works better as a standalone. I'm actually surprised by that. And then, of course, 38% said yes, it was meant to be. So twice as many more people think, nope, we're good the way it is. We think it probably would have worked better this way. So Friday, we already, not only do we know what we're talking about, but we already have it up. We already have it up. So, you guys are definitely going to want to tune into that, because we're going to be talking about, was it CBR.com? That basically gave the 10 greatest sacrifices made in Star Wars. And so what we're going to do, again, keep in mind, this is not our list. This isn't what we think are the 10 greatest sacrifices. This is what this particular website put up a list like a week or so ago, or maybe it was early this week, said, hey, look, these are the 10 greatest sacrifices. So we thought, all right, that would be fun to do this coming Friday. So until then, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.